welcome back. Yeah, just got off of work early this morning. It's about, I don't know, 5 a.m. wake up. And it is a Sunday. So we're going to take the bike out, give Rosa a little stretch and go over to a local meet that I used to frequent quite a bit when I still had my M3. So that would be the M-Town meet, quote unquote. There's quite a few people that show up to it, but it's not all just BMWs either. It tends to be kind of a little bit of everything, honestly. So you can have Beamers, obviously, Porsches, Audis, the typical European stuff for the most part. But on top of that, you'll also see like scattered Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Mercedes, I don't know if I mentioned that. And some oddballs too, like Toyota Supras and Nissan GTRs and just totally goofball random stuff. And some motorcycles, mostly just like, Ducatis or things like that. Not really other kinds of motorcycles like Yamahas or things like that. But it's not too far away. I was planning on going to Morgan Adams event that's at like a polo club or something, but with the start time that was involved and just like my general amount of shit that I had to do this morning, I decided against it. I'm not going to an event on a Sunday after I just got off of work stupid early, and I'm already kind of not super into the idea of going anywhere. So I felt like the M-Town meet was kind of a happy medium, since it's not really a big event that I have to, dedicate time to. Or a lot of time to, I should say. We're actually running a little late, so I think what we're going to do is take the highway today. So here's the deal, guys. I look back at my footage from the first ride video. I posted it regardless of the fact that I thought it looked like garbage, and it was kind of just scatterbrained all over the place, just nonsense. Mostly because I wanted there to be some kind of history on my progression going forward. So that way, if I do end up sticking with this, everybody can kind of look back and just see how much of an idiot I was before, I don't know, I wasn't an idiot, I guess. I don't expect to not be an idiot, but hey, progression and growing and becoming better is part of the whole thing. It's a big process. The other thing that I really noticed was my editing software that I've been using, which it isn't the greatest. I realized I could do so much better in terms of my editing if I had proper software. Because the stuff that I've been using is just garbage. Let's be real. You can see it in the videos I posted. It just looks terrible. And I didn't even really have like an intro or an outro or anything really planned. I just grabbed off of my Instagram posts and just kind of spliced it in and made it work. So, yeah, I'm hoping my growth in terms of like this channel, depending upon how far it goes, shows from that point forward, because right now it just looks terrible. Alright, so here's the real test to see how the wind is this time around. I repositioned my mic to see if I could do a little better on wind muffling this time around. We'll see. I'm not holding my breath because I have a sneaking suspicion part of it has a lot to do with the fact that I don't really run a head sock. And the other part of it is probably due to the fact that I leave my forward mouth vents open, and I probably should keep them closed for this kind of thing. It's not like they really add that much wind flow, airflow, yeah, airflow, but wind flow. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't sound like trash. I know the settings for the video are still going to look kind of garbage. I did not change that at all, but I know how to regrade it and reset it. I just haven't really sat down and played with the settings too much. So, yeah, if it still looks like shit, that's why. It's because I'm being lazy, more or less. That and I did just work 2 days straight after posting those ride videos. So I haven't actually had the camera physically on hand to mess with, nor the time to do it. What should we fix from what I said last time? Well, I'm going to be blatantly, brutally honest about myself and what I posted from part 1 and 2. Most, if not all of it, was pure garbage. That, like, I covered so many different things in such a short period of time, and I even tried to edit out most of the really bad, and it still looks and sounds terrible. So going forward, I'm going to try to dip back into my skills that I haven't used in a long time and really fine-tune myself and how I interact with you guys in the camera / on YouTube. Since I've taken public speaking I don't know how many times now, and of all the times that I've taken it, I've learned one of the most essential truths is not to use filler words or overspeak for the sake of overspeaking, if that makes sense. For instance, if you're actually trying to convey a message or talk to people, you need to just talk. Don't just fill the blank spaces where you're thinking about what you want to say with blank words. If you don't know what blank words are, those are, like, this, that, the other, whatnot. Words like that add no value. They just add to the distraction that pulls away from what you're trying to convey. I hope it makes sense what I'm trying to say. But I'm also really hoping that this time around, at least for this video, there's a marked progression to the point where it doesn't feel so completely off the rails like the last video. Because again, the last video was so off the rails, I almost didn't even post it. Hell, the last 2 videos, because I ended up breaking it up. The ride content was so long, even with the extreme battery that's in my DJI Osmo Pro 5 Pro, whatever the hell it's called. Even with the extreme battery, I was down to 34% after just those 2 clips that I'd recorded, and my actual storage space was only, like, marginally impacted. Because I have a 512 gig micro SD card, I have space for tons of footage in here. But the battery itself was wearing out faster than the stupid microphone that I'm using, which by the way is a mini mic from DJI. so it's magnetized inside my helmet. And again, the positioning with that, even with the dead cat, was kind of wonky, kittywampus, foobar. But that kind of tracks with how I am in terms of my initial setup. I shoot from the hip on stuff like this, and then correct over time to fine-tune all those imperfections and things that I was not happy with. Incidentally, you'll notice I'm wearing my Dainese jacket today. That's because the outside temperature, at least according to the bike, is 73 currently. And the ambient air that's passing over me is actually a lot cooler than it's been for the last at least 3-4 weeks. So I'm definitely wearing my much more protective jacket, not only in terms of armor, but also protection and thermal comfort. Given all the riding that I did the last video, I'm actually kind of surprised that I haven't had a fuel warning light come on. That's one thing I've really noticed with this bike, is that when I get around the 100 to 110 mark on the trip counter, like it is there, this thing will literally be showing that I have dipped into the reserve, and I think the reserve is only like a gallon and a quarter, gallon and a half. So it's not super long, and this is like a 4.5 gallon tank or 4.25 gallon tank. So if you do the math, this thing is really not that fuel efficient, which kind of tracks given on what kind of bike it is. But it's also a little annoying because I think if I remember correctly, my Gixxer that I used to have, my 750, actually used to do a little better than this one. Remember how I was talking about speeds and things and how I think it's not calibrated right? Look at this. Does it make sense now? I mean, obviously the Ford Focus from the last video should have been a pretty clear indicator, but when you see it in this kind of setting with all the other traffic close by, and you see what I'm doing, does it make sense now that I really don't have a clue what my speed is? I honestly should just put question marks over it in the editing. Because at this point, who knows, right? I mean, I'm getting paced by an X5 right now, and it shows 80. But that can't possibly be right, can it? Especially when the rest of traffic is generally doing the same speed I am. If anybody wants to come after me and pull me over for this kind of stuff, I would argue that I'm being safer just trying to keep pace or stay slightly ahead of them, because if I actually followed 65 and 65, I'd probably get run the hell over, and I'd just be another statistic. Quick shifter doing its job there. So something I've really noticed, especially with this bike, is the quick shifter itself is fantastic, first of all, up and down. And it's very easy to find neutral as well. The only thing that I've noticed is that when you think it's actually gonna downshift, when you have it turned on for bidirectional use, if you're not in the right mode, it'll actually disable downshifting. So I found that out the hard way when I was in sport mode instead of race mode or custom mode. I actually thought it was turned on, and it wasn't at all. It was only upshifting when I was basically using it. What the heck? I don't know what that is. Triumph? I think that's a Triumph. Huh. Interesting. Oh, hello, R8 convertible. Alright, we are getting very close now. I'll show you guys the lot for the most part. Ooh, there's hardly anybody here today. Anyway, I'll show you guys the lot. And after doing so, we'll cut and I'll pick you guys back up after I leave. So there you go. That's the lot. Alright guys, welcome back. Had a nice little catch up with a lot of the old M guys that I used to hang out with on a pretty regular basis. And an old friend of mine that I haven't seen probably close to 6 or 7 years now. First time I've actually seen him at all. Last time I actually saw him, I was kind of under the impression he fell off the face of the earth. It wasn't necessarily by choice. He explained to me that the reason he disappeared, more or less, was because of Facebook Marketplace and a bunch of scams and just general douchebaggery that was like following his profile around. It wasn't the greatest. And I can completely understand that, but I was just super stoked to see him. He's got such an expansive number of different BMWs. I can't even list them all. Most of them are all projects, more or less. However, the list of vehicles he's had really just goes all over the spectrum for BMW. Like, you wouldn't believe how many different BMWs he's had, right? Like, just insane. One of the cars that I remember him most fondly with was an older 7 Series. And that older 7 Series, he still has it. I think it's a 740 or 750. It's one of the two, but it's like from, I want to say, mid to late 90s. So if you remember that body style. The sad part, though, is he sold it to someone who totaled it, and he bought it back from them and hasn't had the time to really rebuild it or restore it again. Which, if you have all these different projects, it makes perfect sense, right? Like, it just happens. You end up having so many different things going on. That trying to keep up with them all becomes almost impossible. You just have to chip away at them one at a time. But it was good catching up with him. It was good catching up with everybody. One of the guys that I haven't known super long, maybe 3 years, he just swapped out his project car, which was a F82 M4. He's like the owner and head honcho of AYRD, which does these custom carbon fiber and composite components, mostly aero related. What they're really well known for that started them off was an actual active aero wing that you could attach. I believe it's air driven, like a piston air driven kind of setup, but it reacts to your throttle and your brake in terms of dive plane angle versus straight line, all of that. It's a very clever setup. It's super awesome. Those guys have been killing it. They're making a name for themselves locally and across the entire country. He just swapped his Project F82 out on a G Series M4. I can't remember if it's a competition or not, but it's wrapped in the coolest mint green that you just saw as I rode by, that I think I've seen probably ever. It's just such a soft color, but it works so well on that body. I absolutely love the way he's taking the setup on it. The thing that he actually commented, because I kind of brought it up, I know kind of how he is with his appearance mods. The thing that he brought up that I asked him about was the decision on the wheel color. And even he admits he thinks he wants to go with a white setup on it. So like a white wheel against that color would just look super amazing. Just straight fire. So it'll be cool to see when that's done. My guess is it probably won't take long. He hasn't had the car very long at all. I mean, we're talking maybe a week, if that, or 2. I don't know specifically, but it hasn't been a super long time. Almost kind of similar to how long I've had the bike. He even asked me where I'm at in terms of my current lineup, and I told him this is it. Other than the Stinger, which is my daily and isn't really a show car per se, and I really don't want to build that car up too much just because it is my daily and I know it's going to see really rough snow conditions. So if it gets beat up, I don't have as much pain seeing that, versus if I were to build it up and it was all dinged up from driving around in the absolutely wild winter conditions that we get here, because some winters could be super mild, and I mean, I could ride the bike throughout the whole thing, but then we get other winters where it literally just dumps 2+ feet of snow on us. So we're kind of a weird state in that sense, that our weather never seems to make any real sense in the wintertime. Kind of like our summer has been this year, because it's just been so hot. And not only hot, but like unusually humid too. If you aren't really all that familiar, Colorado is considered an alpine desert. So to have humidity out here on top of blazing heat is not common at all. We do get our fair share of rain and snowpack every year, but it's always drifted up or down. It never seems to stay consistent. It's always all over the place. It's been that way ever since I can remember. So the people that are freaking out thinking, oh no, we're doing so bad here in terms of our water table, We might for now, but honestly, give it like a year or two and we might be doing fantastic. It's always hit or miss. It's never consistent. Like, I think 2 years ago, we actually had the most rainfall during a spring that I think I've seen in years. I think I know what this Accord's trying to do, but I don't trust that he's not just going to try to take me out. I'd rather hang back a little bit. I think he's worried that I'm just going to split everybody, and that's not me. That's not my style. This actually brings up a really good point. So Friday, the day after I rode, unfortunately, we had a major accident that happened along this stretch of road, and unfortunately, we lost 2 riders to negligence. At least that's according to the reports that have been released by the cops. So essentially what happened is probably around 4 o'clock, if I remember correctly, reading the article. I'd have to reference it again and see. But somewhere in the afternoon, right around the time that, you know, school kind of sort of comes out for the high schoolers and stuff, a 18-year-old male who had just recently graduated this spring and a 17-year-old female who was just starting her senior year of high school, they were riding a Suzuki sport bike, I believe. Looked like a Gixxer based on the photo that I did see. I could be wrong. But unfortunately, they were doing a high rate of speed down this road, and a SUV that looked to be an Acura full size, like an MDX, turned in front of them, not knowing, or not really prepared for the speed that the bike was doing. Because let's be honest, anytime a car really pulls in front of you, it isn't always maliciously. It's just because they cannot gauge your speed at all. So anyway, they were doing a high rate of speed. It was never really released how fast they were going, at least as far as I'd seen. That could have been updated by now. Is that thing in the ditch? That thing is in the ditch. Oh, that's going to be fun to recover. So they were doing a high rate of speed. No idea how fast they were going. And this Acura turned left in front of them going into a subdivision street. And both the male and female riders were ejected / killed from the impact because they couldn't swerve, avoid, or anything like that. They literally T-boned, collided with this SUV. The SUV flipped over. From as far as I could tell from the photo, the SUV actually flipped over. I don't really know what caused that, other than probably just sheer panic from the driver, because it sounded like it was a female driver. She was transported to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. But with the impact, it was so violent that it caused the SUV to roll over somehow, in some form or fashion. And we're actually coming up on the site where it all happened, which, sad to say, but that's where we're at right now, is literally riding by the area. I believe it's here. Yep, right here. So the SUV turned here and the collision happened somewhere in this area. And then again, unfortunately, the kids lost their lives. Very sad. We don't wish any kind of harm to come to any of our riders, especially the young ones. But unfortunately, as the cops had said, speed was a major component. After, you know, an exhaustive investigation, they literally had this whole stretch closed down for probably close to 5 hours, just investigating what had happened, which was, again, unfortunate, but that's just how severe the wreck really was. And they were just trying to figure out exactly what had happened, what had led to all these components, especially when we lose 2 kids on a motorcycle. The sad part, though, is the fact that I literally just discussed this on video 1, if you remember, about our crash statistics and riders getting killed, and how I want to say it's Department of Transportation has literally outlined speed as a major contributing factor in most of the fatal crashes that we've had with motorcycles. Which, again, especially if you're not wearing a helmet, that's game over. If you're doing any kind of speed out here and you collide with something that's 4,000 to 5,000 pounds, game over. There's no coming back from that. If you do, it's a miracle. I don't think I've really heard of too many impacts like that where the rider has actually survived, or the passenger for that matter. Scary circumstances, scary problem. Yeah, well, these guys are riding up there. I should have kept going straight. Again, I don't really want to barge in on their ride. They probably know each other. I always feel awkward about like joining up with people mid-ride. You never know how receptive they're going to be to it. Yeah, we're all on 2 wheels, super cool, but also not the greatest to just assume, right? Some people just want to have their time alone, just to clear their heads. Which is mostly what I think I've kind of realized has helped the most going back on 2 wheels, is just clearing my head. Having the ability to really think through my thoughts without any other distractions. Just focusing on the ride and discussing things like a psychopath under the helmet to myself. But if you think about it, now I'm not really talking to myself anymore, am I? I'm actually discussing it with you, so I don't feel like as much of a psychopath anymore. So that's cool. Every time I ride by these prairie dogs and the holes out here, I start thinking about that latest report that came out from California talking about how they're dealing with plague that's coming from the small rodents and things up in one of the areas out there. I don't know if it's, I think it was Tahoe, like around Lake Tahoe, just based on what I remember reading. But it's kind of scary to think that plague is actually making, I guess, a comeback in a sense. Even though it's a treatable illness now, I don't know as if it's necessarily curable, but it's definitely treatable. We've made so many advances in modern medicine nowadays that we're starting to really take a hold of our mortality a little more firmly. One thing I still don't understand, though, is some of the things that European medicine has really modernized and advanced on. We're still not really doing it out here in the US, and if we are, it's just priced out of normal people's ability to actually afford it. Look, it's actually filled back in. That's cool. I feel like this RAV4 behind me is the same guy that pulled that weird right turn next to me the other day. I think he realized he was getting a little too close. Sorry there wasn't really much of a topic again this time, but at least we had a real discussion for a change, and it should be easier to really understand where I'm coming from. Hopefully the editing is actually back on point, at least a little better than it was. I will see you guys on the next one. I need to come up with an outro.